In this session we're going to create our slabs and our roofs. So we'll be creating our verandas, we'll be checking our structure, we might have to put in some columns to support objects. So it's now time to start getting into that. Let's go to our floor 1. Now we could put our slab here in this floor and we could link our slab to the walls here, but we could equally put that slab in this floor here as well. Now I notice that these are not turning off when I want them to turn off, so I'm going to select all of those and make sure they're on the right class. Space, main. Now we can start to assign our slab. Before we do that, just make sure you've got your walls correctly joined together. There we are, so they're correctly joined. Now I'm going to use this to create my slab. There's my slab tool here. So let's just have a look at our settings. Now we can create a slab and we can choose a thickness. We can choose the datum and we can choose whether the datum is the top of the slab or the bottom of the slab. And under my insertion options, I'm going to use the finished floor. So if we go back to this, it's the finished floor. The top of my slab is the finished floor. So in other words, this is going to be underneath my walls. What about my definition? What do we want? Do we want to have a tapered component? Do we want to have a fixed slab thickness? This is if we're looking at our drainage. What about our insertion options? It's going to the finished floor. The datum from the finished floor is 0. Let's create a class for this. We need a class. Structure dash slab. Let's set the properties after creation, so we're going to use it creation. It's going to have a white fill. Don't forget you can give it a pale grey if you want. You can also change the line thickness to make it stand out a little bit more. We could also create a texture for that as well. So we could choose a texture, a small concrete texture, some sort of hatch maybe. Was a nice concrete texture there. So my floors are going to be concrete. I've chosen a texture. And OK. So now when I create a slab, I can pick my walls and it'll use the texture and the settings. Why not we save this as a slab style? So this is a 150mm slab and this is my floor slab. It's not my veranda, it's my floor. OK. Now all I need to do is to pick the walls, and I've got to pick the walls that form a closed boundary. So you might notice I'm just picking all the exterior walls. Okay, now click on the green tick, and so it fills in my slab. If we go back to our slab style, so let's have a look at our slab style here. And let's edit this. So when we do our slab, if we double click on this and we have a look at it, it's got a name. We could give it a name. We could create components for our slab. So we could have a slab that's got a topping on the top, and then it could have a structure underneath. We could have master snap points. I don't want to worry about that because it's just a simple slab. But the auto bound is the interface of the wall. So in other words, my two walls touch each other and my slab doesn't go through it. But I could choose the outer face of the inner component, so it would go up to the edge of my structure. I could choose to have the interface of the wall core. Now if I've created my wall correctly and I've created the middle part as the core, it'll go up to that. And I could have my slab go all the way to the outer face of the wall core. So I've made that change, OK, and yes, replace all of those parts. But now I need to go back and check my wall style to make sure that my wall style is set up correctly, just in case I forgot to put that component, the core. So let's go back to edit. Structure doesn't have the core, so let's choose the core there. Let's update everything. And now we're just going to check that slab, and we're going to auto bounded. Let's just go to edge offsets. So it's bounding to the wall. That should all be fine. But if we wanted to, we could choose edge number 1. It should highlight somewhere. There it is there. Edge number 1, we could say it's going to go to the outer face of the wall core. So it's now gone across to the outer face of the wall core. We could actually select all of those edges, and we could say that all of the edges should be the outer face of the wall core. So what you'll notice is that it's just got the plaster there. So that's hard to see my walls, so let's go send and send to back. So that's created my slab. Now I can go to the next floor up. This is the upper floor. Let's create our slab here as well. So let's choose those parts. And enter. And you notice straight away it's gone to the outside of my core. So let's send that to the back as well. And now let's go upstairs and have a look. So what's the other thing we could do for the roof of this? Let's have a look. Now all my walls have ended up with no height because one of the choices I made. So let's just select object, click there. And what would be really handy is if we created a parapet level. So you can go back anytime you want and add additional levels. So let's edit that. We're going to edit our default stories. And we're going to create a new default story, a new level type, and call it parapet. So this is the top of parapet. So that's the top of the parapet. The elevation about 3.5 meters above the floor. Okay, so now what I want to do is choose the top of the parapet. That's cool. Click OK. Now I can select just the exterior wall. So maybe what I need to do is to check not just the object in class, maybe I need to look at the wall style. So now when I click on that wall, it only picks up my exterior walls. And then I can say, you are the top of the parapet. And so it automatically extrudes that wall up to fit the top of the parapet. What about these walls? Well, these walls we could perhaps fit to the ceiling if we had a ceiling level that we could use. Since we haven't got a ceiling level, let's go back to our stories. Let's go to that story there. Let's edit that and make sure that our ceiling is turned on. Now that particular ceiling is too high maybe, and I think for this floor we needed a ceiling of 2400. Okay. Just check to make sure it's got the right ceiling there. Okay. Okay again. So on these walls I can say finish those to my ceiling. Now I'd like to show you the roof. We haven't got a level for the roof, so let's create one. Back to our stories. We haven't got a level for that yet, so let's edit that and let's add a roof. Now I think we left one here, a roof. There it is there, so click OK and OK again. I'd like to select my exterior walls, and then I'd like to go to AEC and choose Create Roof. This is going to create a standard hip roof, so I'm going to create a vertical edge, thickness of about 6 inches, a roof pitch of say 45 degrees, the bearing height 3.5 meters, which is measured from the walls by the way, at the eave overhang, and retain the original objects. If you don't retain your original objects, you'll lose all your walls. Let's click OK. So there's my roof. Now each roof face has one of these blue handles. If you click on it, you can choose to create that as a gable end. Click on this end. We want that to be a gable as well. Maybe we want this end to be a gable. And then we could, if we want to, create that into a gable. And that one as well. You can do some really weird stuff with this. I've probably gone a bit too far, so I'm going to delete this at some point and throw it away. What I wanted to show you is that you can keep creating gables until you end up with a mono pitch roof. There we go, I've got an error message there. I'm going to keep going, gable, and now choose that one, change the angle to a low angle, say 10 degrees. So now I've just got a flat mono pitch roof. Let's delete that. I can also draw a polygon and get Vectorworks to build a roof from the polygon. So let's use our paint bucket may not be the best way to do it, so I'm just going to use that method. So that's a polygon. I can use that to create my roof as well. So AEC, create roof. This time it's going to have 1 millimeter offset. It's a vertical. It's going to have a shallow pitch, just 3 degrees. The bearing height 2700, and OK. So that's created a similar roof, but this time the roof is inside my parapet. If you have a look. There it is, it's just a simple roof inside my parapet, and if I want to I can do the same thing by getting rid of the gables. But the other thing I might want to do is to create a slab. Well, that's my polygon, so I just need to get rid of that. So let's try creating another slab. This time I'm going to make the slab into my roof. So here we are, it's going to be a tapered component. The datum is the bottom of the component this time. The insertion options is not the finished floor, but it is the ceiling. And above the ceiling I need a few hundred millimeters, so let's make it 400 above the ceiling. So it's going to use the ceiling level to control where my roof goes, or where my slab goes. This time I'm going to create a new class, and I'm going to call it structure. Now this time I think I've already got a class because I used the roof object. So I've got a class called roof main. So that's going to place this on my roof main class. I could put textures on it, so we could choose a texture again, and we could make that texture some sort of concrete using the object textures, and the top is going to be concrete. So there's my definition. So what does this mean about the drainage? Well, it's probably easier if I show you the way drainage works rather than try to explain it. But the idea is that Vectorworks has a drainage tool that we can put in here. So my drainage settings, my default slope is 2%. I don't want to put in a drain object. I could if I want to. There are lots of drain objects I could insert. So if you wanted to, you could put in a roof drain, or you can just leave that symbol off completely. We can put the drain notes on classes. So it's probably a good idea to have a slab class for that, so that you can create slab drainage, have it turn up on classes. That way it won't show up in models when you don't want it to. Let's create some new slab classes. So slab notes, slab elevations, so this is slab notes, and I'm not going to edit the properties after creation. Slab notes, slab elevations, let's create a new class for that. Elevations. Slope arrows, they can be on the same slab notes class. Slope values, put those on the same class again maybe. And then OK. Let's save that as a slab style. We'll call it our 3. This is going to be quite deep. So this is going to be a 400 millimeter roof. I'll call it a slab roof. Slab roof, OK, and I just need to go back to my definition. I need to make it a lot thicker. Let's make it 400 millimeters thick. OK, and save that as a preference. OK, and then OK again. So now I should be able to select these walls again. Click on the green tick, and there's my roof. Now, my offsets should really be inside that, so they should really all have been selected. They should really be using the inner face of the wall, and I should really have set that on my slab. So let's go back to that. Let's find our slab style. Let's find our 400 millimeter slab. Let's edit that, and let's make sure that we've got the correct settings here. So here, not the outer face of the wall, but the inner face of the wall. OK, OK again, and OK. Let's just go back to our selection tool. So what we should have now is a slab, a very thick slab. If we select that slab and then activate our clip cube, now if you don't know what these are my quick preferences. Here I can choose what my quick preferences are. and I've got one here which is Show Clip Cube. Now the Show Clip Cube just allows you to see the clip cube as a quick preference just here. If you select an object and then activate that Show Clip Cube, it puts a three-dimensional cube around your object. I can pull that down, I can pull that face in, and now you can see the relationship between my walls and my slab. Back to a top plan view. So that's my slab, and I want to put some drainage, and I'd like to drain to that corner and this corner perhaps. It's my slab drainage tool. Let's look at inserting a drain. Now you might remember I've already said I don't want to use a default symbol. If I wanted to, I could certainly choose a default symbol and just pick one of the roof drains that's already there, and then come to this corner and I want a drain to go there. I want another drain to go over here, and there are my drains. Now I'm a bit close to the corner for that one, so I need to pull that back a wee bit. Let's go back to our slab and let's go back to our edit, and there's my drain. I can pull that out and you can see there it is in the corner. So the elevation is 0 for that slab, elevation is 0 there, and it's now calculated where all my roof falls have to go in order to get my roof to drain to that point. So let's just have a look at our clip cube, because I've said to Vectorworks to taper that object, taper that part. I'm just having a look to see if it's tapered it, and I want to look into that area. So you can see there's a subtle taper, which means that the underside of my slab is flat, but my entire slab is tapered at the top portion of it, which is pretty cool. Let's turn off my clip cube. So I've now got my slab at the top. What I need to create is a slab here for my veranda, and I'd like to also put some drainage on it. We need to see the other layers as well. Window, palettes, and navigation. So I need to see floor 2. I'm working in floor 3 at the moment, and I need to see floor 2, so I'm going to say grey snap others. So now what I'd like to do is to create a slab, only this time when I create my slab I'm just going to draw it using my polyline mode. So from there, to that corner, and back to where I started. Or what you can do, if I hit the delete key, it undoes the last click, hit the K key to close that. It's a slab, it's 400mm thick, and we're going to put some slab drainage in. This time I'm not going to use that object, I'm just going to use nothing, and I'm going to click here. I'd like my water to drain off this side. So there we are. Now it's a little bit high because it's actually the roof of the veranda above. I also need to put one here for the floor below. So why don't we just try and see what happens. If I choose that and send it to the floor below, there it is, and you can see because of the thickness of it, it's actually standing up. Really, I don't think it would want to be quite as thick as that. So maybe that wants to be not the 400mm, maybe it should really be the 150 thick slab. And there it is there. Now because of the way I've chosen it, it's actually dropped down to the ground, and that needs to be higher up. So that's probably a good one to send to the floor above. And then when we look at the floor above, we should see our veranda. Let's just have a look. So there's our veranda. It's slightly higher than it should be. So let's just have a look at that one. The Z offset should really be one of my levels. I think I've got one called top of veranda. And there it is, it just sits down a wee bit. You might notice this slab is not tapering, but the entire slab is tilted because of my choices. If you don't want to have any slab drainage on there and you don't want to have that tilted, you can go back to your slab drainage tool, you can click on that drain and then delete. and it'll remove the drainage for you. So there's my veranda, and you can see my walls below are actually coming up, and while this forms the roof of the veranda, it's not doing quite what I wanted. Let's have a look. These walls here, this one, and that wall, they're a little bit too high, so they're forming like a parapet around my slab. You see on the menu bar, fit walls to objects, and let's constrain the tops of my walls to the objects on the floor above. And so now it's set that down. My walls have been set down to match my slab. There's a slab upstairs. I'm just going to raise that up at that end, and I'm going to remove that handle, that point. So if I change my layer options to show snap others, now you can see it looks like a continuous building. What do we need to do next? We need to make sure that we can see our floor below, so that looks fine. We've got some stairs to come up here which we have to work on, but we've also got some other slabs to look at. Let's just turn our view around. There's a slab out the back here that we also need to draw. And if you have a look around the corner here, you'll notice that I've changed my design, but I haven't updated my foundation, so I'll have to do that as well. So the next step is to draw the foundations and the footings here, put the slab in as I've already shown you, and repair that wall. I'll show you how to repair the wall though. Let's go back to our floor 1, and let's turn off the floor above, and we'll go grey snap other so we can see it. So what we need to do is to pull this wall across till it lines up with that one. The center of that wall goes to the center of that part, and now I need to create some additional walls. We could split our walls, so we could get our split tool, we could run a split line through here, and we could split those walls. But that's only going to be half the things that we need, because we still need to create extra walls. So let's delete that, and we'll delete that as well. Now remember the technique, the Control plus Alt key, that way we can draw our footing. So back to the center line mode, find that middle line around there. Make sure your auto join is turned off, it can cause trouble if you don't turn it off. So we're going to draw around here, round to that point, down to here, and double click there to stop. Delete that line, delete that wall as well. So that's my new part round there. So now Option Command or Control plus Alt, and now just zoom in because we're going to draw along that face. Make sure we're using our correct wall style and click along there. So there's our plaster line on the outside. And if you need to, use the Z key to zoom in. And there's our new wall. Now just join it up using our wall join tool. So join that to there, and that wall to there, that one to there, and the footing to there. So that's our updated footing. I see I haven't moved this wall up the top here. So let's just zoom in. We're going to move that wall from the outside to the outside. That's the easy way to do it. From the outside to the outside, and this wall from the midpoint to the middle of there. So from the midpoint of that to the middle of that wall. So just check your walls and make sure that you're accurate with your drawing, because as you change the design around, you might just have to move some of your walls. So the middle of that to the middle of that. And there we are. So here we were going to create another area out here. It's going to be easier if we draw the slab first, and then we can draw our foundations around there. So back to the floor 2. This is where we're going to put our slab. You could just create a rectangle from there to there, probably from that corner to this corner here. So Z or Z key to zoom in. and then convert that to a slab. Right click, create objects from shapes, you're a slab, and OK. And then when the slab arrives, just check to make sure it's the right kind of slab, and if not, replace it. Check it in 3D, make sure it's at the correct elevation. You might remember we created a specific level for this one called top of veranda, so it drops down about 50 millimeters. Now that we've got that slab in place, we can now go back to our floor, we can see the outline, and we can draw our foundation for that. So back to our wall. Now when we draw around our foundation, it is going to be the face of the plaster. So what we might want to do is to go back to our wall styles, have a look at our foundation wall, edit that, and make sure that it has a core component. The core component is really important, because when you use a core component, you can then say, I want to use the core control line. So it's going to go from there up to there, and then double click there to finish. So that's our foundation wall, and then we can extend our footing. So let's go to our footing, back to that mode, center line, so we're going to look for the center of this wall, up there, find the corner, and then down here, and finish in line with that. Send that and that to the back. Send to back. So it's now starting to take shape. We're getting our slabs, we're getting our foundations in, and if there are any slabs that I've forgotten, please go put them in. Let's make sure we can see our other layers, so show snap others. Here you can see I've got the same problem I had around the front. I've got two walls that actually come up above my slab. They should be below the slab, so let's make sure we select those, that wall and that wall. AEC on the menu bar, fit walls to objects, to the underside of objects on the floor above, floor 2. It's going to be quite useful to put a column in here. Before we do that, make sure you're in the correct layer. Get your column tool, and we'll just put a column here, double click. So what I'd like to is look at the settings that we've got here. Let's put our top offset to 0. I'd like to set this column to be connected to the top of the veranda of the story above, but needs to be set down by the thickness of that veranda, which is 150 millimeters. I'd like the bottom of this to be set to the top of the veranda of this floor. Now when I drag that column and stick it on top of that veranda, it should be perfectly connected between the two stories. Let's just have a look. Floor 3, and we haven't got a veranda up there, so we need to put one in. But also that column is pretty heavy. Let's have a look at it. There's our column. Its shaft width is 500. That's probably far too wide. Let's make it 250, 250, and 250 there as well. Let's find the base and the capital. I'm going to make those 350, 350, the capital height about 150, 6 inches. Now the base, 350 again, scroll down where it is here, so that's 350, and the base about the same, 150 millimeters. So it's changed the size of that quite a lot, and it's always based around its center. So just be careful when you drag it, make sure you're dragging it by its outside corner, and that's where we want it to sit. Let's just have a look at that. So there's my column. I need to have a copy of this one, so what I'm going to do is control click, and then I'm going to move that to the floor above. When we check the floor above, we should see our slab is in the right place, and that column that we have downstairs, we should also make a copy of that and send that to the floor above as well. Now when we do that, there's going to be an error because the floor above does not have the story above. So let's try that. So send that to floor 3, and then we get a mistake at the top there because it's trying to connect that column above to the story above, which it doesn't know. So let's select that object there, and we're going to have to change this We had that as a minus 150, and it's trying to go to the top of the veranda of the story above. Let's just check. We should have a veranda at the top here as well, or a slab at the top. So let's just wait till we get to that one. So we've got some work to do upstairs. Let's get to that later. So on this floor, we'd like to put a handrail here and a handrail there. We have a handrail tool. It's in the furniture tool set. Here it is here. I'm going to go back to a plan view, and I'd like to create a handrail. The handrail has a lot of settings on it. If we click on that settings, we can see we've got the handrail here, and we can use current settings either from the fence or from the current document. So let's have a look at railings. What kind of railings do we have access to? So these are railings that Vectorworks has by default. We could choose this one, which has got a perforated metal with a round top. Let's click OK, and we're going to go to this point here, maybe in line with the center of that column. So click, and 2 clicks to finish. So in the top area here, we might have a stair. We don't know where the stair is going to go exactly, so we could start by drawing just a small part, and then double click to finish, and then draw another part over here, and double click to finish there as well. Ideally, these probably need to go as far out as possible, so that we maximize the area that we've got for our living. So let's just drag that one across, and make sure it lines up. If you're having trouble getting this to line up, just zoom in. That'll make it a lot easier. Let's just zoom out and have a look at that. And so we've got our column and we've got our railings. Now the railings are probably sitting just a little bit up in the air because they may not be set to sit on the level, which is our top of veranda. So don't forget, we have a height here of about minus 50 millimeters. Make sure that you've got your railing sitting at the correct elevation. Upstairs, we also need to put those same railings and columns. We need a roof over here. We also need a roof over the veranda at the front. So let's create those parts. We've got this veranda slab at the front. We need to put a roof above it, but we also need to extend that out a little bit, and it's hard to see because of our roof here. Why don't we use our visibility tool and hide that so that we can now see our slab in relation to the downstairs. If I hold my finger on the B key, you'll see that the downstairs almost lines up with that wall there anyway. So why don't we extend that slab by double clicking. We're going to edit the boundary, or we can just use the reshape tool. Just before we pull that out, just check to make sure you're using this mode. This makes it easy to pull the edge out because it means that you won't accidentally change the size of it. And that's changed the slab. So if we have a look at this in 3D, we will need a column underneath here. We'll also need a wall to support the column. We need to put a column on the corner. We need to put a column here. And we need to put our railing around it. So I'm going to fly around back to this column here because I quite like this column. I'd like to use this column again. And what I can do with that column is select it and then save it. So let's save that column, and I'll call it, let's say 150 column. Now let's go back up to the upstairs. Let's have a look to see what we've got here. And when we try to reuse that column, we will get an error message because of the story above not being there. So let's go to here. We'll go and choose our column. Here we can choose our 150 column, so select, and then when we place that column, we'll probably get an error message about where it's located. So here the top of veranda of the story above doesn't exist, so we're going to use either the top of the parapet or the roof, something like that, that gives us the ability to change the height of that. So the underside of it needs to be minus 50, and it doesn't like that. And the top offset here is going to be around about 8 feet. and it's gotten a little bit confused because we've changed the height of that. Let's make that our layer wall height and set that to 0. And it still doesn't like the capitals not being there. So let's go back and check our capitals. Capital height, that was 150. And if we go to the base height was also 150. And so now we've got a better looking column. We do need to put it in the right location. So let's just move it from that outside corner to there. And we've got some parts downstairs that we might be able to copy. So let's go back to the downstairs. That railing there, we can copy that directly because it's just a copy upstairs, and we can move that to the 3rd floor. Let's have a look at our 3rd floor. So we need to put in another railing. This time the railing is going right across. So back to our railing tool, and this time we're going to go from this corner over here right across to there. So double click, and then I'm going to move that railing. So there it is there. Let's have a look in 3D. It's not so bad. Let's put the column in the front. So back to a plan view. Top plan view, hit key 0 on your numeric keypad. I need a copy of this column, so you can drag that column with your control key held down or your option key on a Macintosh, and that will create a copy. So I can just drag that to the corner. I'm going to mirror that about the center of my slab, so I've got 2 copies of it, and then I can put in my handrails. This handrail is almost a repeat but not quite, so let's go back to a handrail tool, and we're going to put in a handrail. It's going to go from here down to there, but you'll notice it's probably easier just to put it there first and then just drag it across so it lines up with the edge of your slab. We've got another one to go through here, so let's start at that corner. You'll notice that when I snap to that part of the column rather than the outside face. That's because of something called master snaps. The column has a master snap on the edge of the shaft, so you often have to zoom in. Let's just zoom in. I'll move that up. I'm just going to grab it by that corner there, move it up to there, and I need to repeat this at the other end. So I've just chosen that. Use my mirror tool, find the midpoint, and mirror it down there. So I've now got my columns and I've got my railings. What I also need is a roof above here. So I could select my slab and I could duplicate it. But what I really need to have up there is a roof slab that's going to give me the drainage. So what can we do? How about if we create a new slab style? Let's create a duplicate. This is going to be a 450 millimeter, and I probably don't need to write millimeter, but this is going to be my veranda roof. So how am I going to create this roof? Let's edit that and we'll go through it. I need to have a structural component, so I'm going to use the underside of this. I'm going to set this probably to a specific height. I also need another component, a component above this, which is going to be my parapet. It's going to be about 300 thick. It's got a lambda value I'm not going to worry about. I'm going to use class style. If I had classes, I'd use that. And I could put a texture on it as well. So the parapet wants to be at the top. My structure needs to be at the bottom. My ceiling or my structure. And this is about 150 millimeters thick, giving me my overall height. So what have we got? We've got a structure and we've got a parapet. The parapet could be a tapered component. Let's just go here. The parapet is a tapered component that will have the drainage in it, and the structure will be a solid underside. So let's have a look at that. Got our insertion options. OK. Click OK. And now what we can do is we can right click and apply, so we can apply that slab style to the one that we've created. Now, I think they're still both on the ground. What we should have done when we created that slab was to give it a specific height. So let's edit that, let's look at our structure, let's look at our insertion options, and the offset should be about 8 feet. Click OK, let's update all of that information, and now you'll notice that my roof is now sitting up in the air. So that column and that column are probably just a little bit too high. Their offset should be layer wall height with an offset of -50. And I should do that for all my columns. So now what I can do with this roof is I can draw another rectangle. This time I'm going to use my rectangle from center. There. I could go all the way out to there, but I'm just going to draw my rectangle leaving a parapet edge. Now if I draw to that corner there, and then I say I need a parapet of 150 millimeters at each edge, so that's -300. I've now got 150 at each edge, and -150 from the bottom. And then I can select those two things, this and my slab, right click, clip surface, and then choose to subtract my rectangle, not from the structure, but just from the parapet. And now I've got a parapet roof. Let's go back over here. So I'm going to control click on that slab as well. So I've got a copy of it. Let's apply that one. It should lift that roof up in the air for me. There it is. Let's do the same thing we did before. Let's draw a rectangle from that corner to that corner, and let's offset that. So here we want to -150, and there -150 as well. And you notice I moved my box position to the bottom right, so it took it off each corner. So let's select both of those. Let's clip surface again. Let's select it from the parapet, and I should have my roof. There it is there. So this column is just a little bit too high, so -50 on that. So I've now got my columns working, I've got my roof above, and we have our railings. So the next step is really just to put in our doors and windows.